Und herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Episode von Oshun, Deutschlands ersten, schönsten, besten, tollsten Sneaker-Streetwear-Podcast, und alle anderen Attribute klammern wir ein, denn wir sind der Erste, und ob wir der Rest auch sind, das ist euch überlassen. Das könnt ihr vielleicht dann nach dem Hörgenuss dieser Episode entscheiden. Vielleicht habt ihr auch schon eine vorgefertigte Meinung, die uns ins Positive dreht. Die nehmen wir auch gerne. Lange Rede, kurzer Sinn. Mein Name ist Amadeus Thüner, auf der anderen Seite sitzt Fabian Fabs Goslar. Schönen guten Tag.
What up? Freut mich hier zu sein. Wie geht's dir, Amadeus?
Sehr gut. Ich bin sehr entspannt. Es ist eine schöne Zeit und ich freue mich sehr auf diese Episode.
Ja, ich auch. Wir haben einen sehr, sehr coolen Gast für euch im Interview. James Whitner natürlich. Aber bevor wir darüber reden, du warst unterwegs.
Ehrlicherweise bin ich es immer noch. Ich war unterwegs auf dem Weg in die Heimat, denn meine Mutter hat Geburtstag gefeiert, inklusive groß angelegtem Familienfest, denn über die letzten Monate, fast schon Jahre, war es sehr schwierig, die gesamte Familie zusammenzubringen. Wir sind jetzt nicht 160 Leute oder so, aber trotzdem ein wenig stärker verstreut, und dann eben aus gegebenen Gründen war es nicht ganz so einfach, alle an einen Platz zu kriegen. Aber jetzt, wo die Mutter, die jüngste von 3 Kindern, mal Geburtstag hat und dann auch noch einen Runden, war für alle anderen klar, da feiern wir. Das haben wir jetzt schon getan, und jetzt bin ich in Amsterdam mal wieder und genieße die gute Zeit, habe ein paar Sachen zu erledigen, und dann bin ich ja auch wieder unterwegs, weil ich muss ja nochmal zurück nach Berlin. Also von daher hast du schon recht, ich bin unterwegs gewesen, aber ich bin auch unterwegs, und an dieser Stelle kann man vielleicht dann auch nochmal, weil es so gut zum Thema passt, auch noch auf unsere beiden letzten Episoden hinweisen. Einmal unser Interview mit Filling Pieces und in der Episode davor unser Interview mit Tim von Putter. Mittlerweile sind ja alle 6 Wave veröffentlicht, das riesige Package. Ich glaube, gerade beim Pure Platinum sind die Leute nochmal komplett durchgedreht. Beim Dark Russet entwickelt sich so langsam aber auch eine Fangemeinde. Das finde ich schön zu sehen. Ja? Also von daher, The Wave ist auserzählt. Mindestens bis jetzt. Also wer sich noch an das Interview mit Tim von Putter erinnern kann, gut, das ist jetzt nicht so super lange her, ne? Aber wer noch sein Lachen im Ohr hat, als es darum ging, dass ich ihn mit dem Gerücht konfrontiert habe, dass ja Menschen darüber sprechen, dass es eventuell auch mal ein Retro-Package von den ersten Air Max One Putter geben könnte. Das hat Bände gesprochen. Aber hey, er hat ja auch gesagt, you never know, ne? Oder in guter alter James Bond-Manier, sag niemals nie. Von daher mal gucken, ob das passiert. Und abseits davon, dann wie gesagt die Episode darauf, sprich also die vorhergehende, war ja mit Filling Pieces, und auch da ist einiges los. Das heißt, Amsterdam ist booming, wie man so schön sagt. Eine sehr, sehr schöne Stadt, auch wenn es gerade nicht 35 Grad warm ist. Ehrlicherweise ist das aber auch ganz okay. Wir nähern uns so langsam dem Herbst. Ich merke jedes Mal, wenn es so um Jahreszeitenwechsel geht, dass ich irgendwie jede Jahreszeit ganz gerne mag, aber eigentlich immer die am meisten, die man gerade nicht so hat. Weißt du? Also wenn so Winter ist, denke ich so, oh, jetzt Frühling und warm wäre schön. Und wenn dann so Frühling und warm ist, denke ich so, ach Mensch, der Winter war eigentlich auch ganz nett. Also von daher, vielleicht bin ich auch wirklich echt so der klassische Mitteleuropäer, der auch einfach jede Jahreszeit braucht. Aber die hast du in Amsterdam mindestens, und von daher bin ich ganz froh, wieder hier zu sein.
Genau, an dieser Stelle wollte ich fragen, du bist ja sehr, sehr oft in Amsterdam, ne? Und es kann ja nicht nur an dem Wetter liegen. Also, warum gefällt dir die Stadt so? Ich meine, es ist ja ein schönes Fleckchen und hat schon das eine oder andere oder den einen oder anderen coolen Sneaker-Store, aber was treibt dich da sonst so hin?
Amsterdam ist einfach cozy. Also cozy trifft's auch wirklich, gerade auch in der englischen Benutzung des Wortes, am besten. Weil natürlich ist Amsterdam eine Metropole. Amsterdam ist nicht nur europaweit bekannt, auch weltbekannt. Amsterdam hat eine boomende Szene, egal um was es geht. Kunst, Musik in allen möglichen Ausrichtungen. Natürlich aber auch so das typisch Niederländische. Gleichzeitig ist so das Niederländische nicht ganz so weit entfernt vom Deutschen. Das heißt also, du hast nicht das Gefühl, du befindest dich jetzt komplett in einem komplett anderen Kulturkreis, was natürlich auch total positiv sein kann, aber ja manchmal eben auch vielleicht auch manchmal ein bisschen schwierig. Also du kannst dich sehr schnell wohlfühlen dort, aber abseits davon trifft Cozy auch einfach darauf zu, weil das, was dort in Amsterdam passiert, also diese Tourismuslautstärke auch, die man natürlich hat, die konzentriert sich sehr auf den Mittelpunkt. Aber drumherum wird es ein bisschen entspannter und ruhiger. Also ich meine, wenn ich in meiner Wohnung in Berlin auf dem Balkon stehe, dann kann ich gefühlt zum Fernsehturm spucken, und trotzdem wären es zu Fuß noch 30 Minuten. Ja? In Amsterdam laufe ich innerhalb von einer Stunde einmal durch die Stadt durch. So. Und du kriegst alles mit. Du siehst alles, da sind tolle Einflüsse, gute Restaurants, nette Menschen, der Vibe ist toll. Und das liegt nicht nur an den geliebten Sportzigaretten, die man da so hat. Da bin ich nämlich komplett raus aus diesem Thema. Und trotzdem steckt mich halt eben diese Entspanntheit komplett an. Und das finde ich ganz persönlich in wenigen anderen Städten auf dieser Welt. Und da Amsterdam natürlich auch netterweise so nah an uns dran ist, also sowohl an der deutschen Grenze als eben auch an Berlin, also das ist ja jetzt nun mal wirklich keine große Entfernung. Deswegen übrigens, wenn US-Amerikaner nach Europa kommen, sind die immer so, ja wieso, Zugfahrt, Amsterdam, Berlin, Berlin, Paris, Paris, Mailand, irgendwie noch nach London, so, das ist ja nichts, das ist ja für die um die Ecke. Das ist dann tatsächlich auch so ein bisschen so. Also von daher ist es immer ein sehr gewollter Abstecher, wobei Abstecher klingt immer so kurz. Ich bin ja wirklich schon gerne auch länger dann dort, aber es ist wirklich sehr gewollt. Ich liebe diese Stadt wirklich sehr. Ich kann mir ehrlicherweise kaum eine schönere Stadt vorstellen, zumindest zum jetzigen Zeitpunkt nicht. Und deswegen versuche ich so viel Zeit wie möglich hier zu verbringen und genieße das einfach sehr.
Nice. Ja, cozy trifft's ganz gut. Vor allem
Oder? Ja.
die dünnen kleinen Häuser, die finde ich, oder Häuschen muss man fast sagen, die sind auf jeden Fall sehr, sehr cozy.
Ja, aber man unterschätzt das manchmal. Die gehen ja häufig noch nach hinten durch. Ne?
Das stimmt.
Und es ist ja auch so, je mehr Treppenstufen gerade die Häuser an den Grachten haben, desto imposanter sind sie dann von innen bzw. nach hinten durch. Weil das war früher immer das Zeichen, weil tatsächlich auch ganz früher wurde das auch steuerlich so bewertet. Je mehr Stufen ein Haus hat, desto teurer war das Ganze, weil man konnte sich das ja anscheinend leisten, so viele Stufen dahin zu bauen. Das bedeutet also, wenn man ein Haus sieht, was jetzt auch schon so Richtung 4 Stockwerke geht und dann vielleicht 6 Stufen hat statt 2, kann man wirklich davon ausgehen, dass sich dahinter noch so ungefähr 200 Quadratmeter und vielleicht sogar noch ein Garten befindet. Also auch das sehr, sehr spannend in Amsterdam auf jeden Fall. Aber wie gesagt, ne, man hat die Filling Pieces Episode, man hat die Putter Episode und wir haben natürlich unsere Episode mit unserem Dutch Homeboy Tommy Trigger, dem Sneaker OG gemacht, wo es ein kompletter Citytrip war. Also wer sich noch ein bisschen mehr für Amsterdam interessiert oder interessieren möchte, da gibt es so einige Episoden, die wir da schon im Roster haben. Jetzt aber erstmal die neue Episode Oshun und bevor wir ins Thema und das Interview mit James Whitner von Maniére und Social Status starten, natürlich die Frage, what's on our feed today? Und ich kann mir vorstellen, dass wir es gerade sehr thematisch halten. Aber Fab, sag mal, was ist heute an deinem Fuß?
Ja genau, passend zum Thema habe ich den Social Status Nike Dunk Chocolate Milk an. Es ist ein Mit, aber es ist auch ein Chocolate Milk Dunk. Ja, einfach ein super Schuh, nicht nur, weil er cool aussieht und man den gut kombinieren kann. Es ist es steckt einfach eine tolle Geschichte dahinter. Deswegen für mich heute, an dem Tag, an dem wir mit James Whitner reden, war es einfach ein Muss, einen James Whitner Schuh anzuziehen.
Ich meine, wir besetzen uns natürlich der Gefahr aus, dass James Whitner sagt, so Leute, könnt ihr mal den Screen auf eure Füße richten? Ich will wissen, was ihr am Fuß tragt. Deswegen geht man schon gut damit, wenn man halt auch eben eine Collab an den Fuß sieht. Aber ey, ist ja auch einfach, ne, aufgrund von Respektsgründen macht man das manchmal. Abseits davon muss ich an der Stelle aber auch sagen, es ist tatsächlich auch einer meiner liebsten Schuhe, die ich heute am Fuß anhabe. Der beste Schuh des Jahres 2021, natürlich der Nike Air Jordan 3 von und mit Maniére. Etwas, was eine großartige Legacy losgetreten hat mit dem darauffolgenden Einer, dem Zweier und dem, was da jetzt noch ansteht. Auch darüber werden wir mit James Whitner in den nächsten Minuten sprechen und deswegen halten wir das Intro doch mal ein bisschen kürzer als sonst, gehen direkt rein in dieses Thema und ins Interview mit Mr. James Whitner.
Heute geht's ganz viel um Community. Community ist das Herz und die Seele der Sneaker- und Streetwear-Szene. Wir alle sind ein kleiner Teil dieser Community. Und ja, wir lieben Schuhe und Klamotten und neue Dinge zu kaufen, aber wir lieben es auch, uns darüber mit anderen auszutauschen, gemeinsam Ws zu feiern und Ls hinterher zu trauern. Oshun gäbe es zum Beispiel nicht ohne die Community. Zumindest nicht in der Form, in der der Podcast heute existiert. Natürlich hätten Simon und Amma ohne Publikum und Instagram einfach über Schuhe schnacken können. Aber
was wir am Anfang auch gemacht haben.
Genau. Aber genau das zeigt, wie wichtig Community auch ist. Und deswegen haben wir in dieser Folge einen sehr wichtigen Gast zum Interview eingeladen. Jemandem, dem Community mindestens genauso wichtig ist wie uns. Die Rede ist von keinem Geringeren als James Whitner, Gründer und Eigentümer von The Whittaker Group. Wer den Maniére Air Jordan 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 feiert oder wer den Social Status Dunk feiert, der sollte wissen, wer gemeint ist. And if you don't know, now you know. James Whitner und sein The Whittaker Group Team leiten 4 Retail-Stores in Amerika. Die 2 bekanntesten sind Maniére und Social Status. Dazu kommen auch noch APB und Prosper. The Whitner Group beschreibt sich selbst als an award-winning experiential and creative company at the helm of globally renowned brands Maniére, Social Status, APB, Prosper, and their connected community platforms Handwash Cold, Be Social, and APBU. Aber bevor wir uns die Stores und deren Releases näher anschauen, ist es wichtig zu verstehen, wer James Whitner ist und warum er zu dem Thema Community bzw. Community-fördernde Produktreleases so viel sagen kann. Whitner kommt aus Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania und ist im Montview Heights Housing Projects aufgewachsen. In solchen Projects, wie sie auf Englisch genannt werden, ist Community, vor allem die Black- und BIPOC-Community, sehr wichtig. Sehr oft kommt zu wenig oder gar keine Unterstützung vom Staat, weshalb die Leute aus den Projects sich selbst und einander helfen müssen. Genau diese Mentalität hat Whitner mit sich genommen, der in den letzten Jahrzehnten ein kleines Retail-Imperium aufgebaut hat. Und jetzt, als Leiter dieser 4 Retail-Stores, hat bei Whitner Community eine sehr hohe Priorität in allem, was er macht. Alle Projekte, alle Collabs, bei allem ist Community der goldene Faden. Der Maniére 3 ist inspiriert von seiner Mutter, die ihm und seinen Brüdern den Dreier gekauft hat. Sein allererster Jordan. Der Schuh an sich wurde in Frauengrößen released, sollte eigentlich während Women's History Month droppen und ist eigentlich ein Frauenschuh. Er heißt Raised by Women und feiert die vielen alleinerziehenden Frauen, viele von ihnen wohnhaft in diesen Projects, die ihre Kinder erziehen, nebenbei mehrere Jobs haben und viel, viel mehr. Der Social Status Dunk wiederum wurde inspiriert von Free Lunches, die Kinder in den Projects oft in Community Center bekommen haben. Das waren kostenlose Lunches und da gingen sie oft nach der Schule hin, haben Nachhilfe bekommen, Hausaufgaben gemacht und gespielt, bis sie nach Hause konnten, damit sie nicht auf der Straße landeten. Im Rahmen des Releases hat Whitner zusammen mit Nike sein altes Community Center renoviert und neu eröffnen lassen. Man sieht, Community heißt viel mehr, als sich mit anderen verstehen und über Sneaker auszutauschen. Man kann Community und wichtige Themen durch Sneaker-Releases verarbeiten und richtig geile Geschichten erzählen. Jetzt kommen wir wieder zurück zu Whitners 4 Retail-Locations. Alle unterscheiden sich voneinander und erzählen deswegen ganz andere Geschichten über Community durch Produkte. Maniére ist eher ein Luxus-Retailer, wo man Designerklamotten und Schuhe bekommt. Deswegen sehen die Jordans auch etwas gehobener aus als die Social Status Dunks zum Beispiel. Social Status ist eher eine Streetwear-Boutique, die deswegen auch jüngere Konsumenten lockt. Da findet man Brands wie Stone Island, Awake New York, Pleasure, Stussy oder Timberland. Dann sind da noch APB, wo man ein etwas günstigeres Sortiment findet. Und Prosper, eine Boutique in New Jersey, die sehr auf New Jersey Style, Trends und Brands ausgerichtet ist. Lange Rede, kurzer Sinn. Für James Whitner und sein Team steht Community an allererster Stelle. Ob bei der Gestaltung der Retail-Stores, die Events, die dort gehostet werden oder auch mal Hype-Drops und Collabs. Und genau deswegen wollten wir mit James reden, seine Meinung zur Entwicklung der Streetwear-Community hören und natürlich über seine Collabs zu sprechen. Also, James, welcome to Oshun, your first ever German podcast. I don't know if Mark told you, but you're going to be doing this in German, right?
Yes. I've been practicing my German, and I'm going to be horrible at it.
Very, very good. No, it's lovely to have you on the show. As you know, Germany is super into your sneakers, into your retail stores, but also into community in general, which is why we wanted to talk a little bit about that with you, seeing as you and your team are kind of the, foremost storytellers and the foremost cultivators of community, I would say, at least from, my experiences with you and the team. So I would say let's just kick it off, and I want to ask you, what is community to you right now?
You know what? I think it's the it's crazy because I just had to write like a outline of my brain because I'm working on something for next week. And I think it's just about cultivating humanity in a meaningful way, right? It's the idea of bringing us together to just be better for each other. And I think in different parts of the world, and there's different issues that show themselves differently, right? And I think because of that, you got to be hypersensitive to what's happening in the communities the local communities that you're a part of, while being focused on the things that are most important to you, right? And I think being born as a Black person in Earth, but more specifically a Black person in America, there's a lot of plights to go along with it. And then you just take an extra step onto that, saying being a poor person in America, being born as a poor person in America. So when you grow up in a country, whether it's civilized or third world, if you're poor and you're a minority, it's just a tough go of it. So for me, it's about empathy for humans and trying to level the playing field in regards to the opportunities for having equal opportunities for everyone.
Like you said, community is different from place to place, right? I imagine that the sneaker community in Berlin, Germany is very different to the sneaker community in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But you can say the same about time, right? The community changes over time. And because you, but also Amma, have been around for a little bit longer than myself, I want to hear from you. How do you feel sneaker and streetwear community has changed over time, and maybe some positive changes you've seen over the last few years?
Well, the world has gotten smaller, and now we're getting a heartbeat. I think it started off with just as all of us didn't really have a space. We had a voice, but we didn't have a global voice. And I think what we've seen over the last 10 years is the evolution of our global voice. And we're starting to now see our global voice unify. The fact that we're talking about community with the Black guy from the US on a podcast in Germany speaks to that very point, right? You now have a unified global voice. And I think we all understand that there's a greater responsibility than just copping stuff, right? That's the fun part. But I think now we're starting to connect on all the other things that what are our other shared values outside of just collecting sneakers or being interested in sneakers.
Right. That's a really good point. And leads me a little bit to the next topic, which is, do you think that through the increased consumerism over the last few years, a sense of community may have been lost in some corners of the culture scene? Because as you said, it's not just about copying things, right? True community is about togetherness and standing for things. But now more than ever, there's more and more releases every week. And so it can be a bit hard to see through the noise, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think it's always been the blend of what I always like to call sugar and veggies, or hype versus authenticity, has always been something that's kind of been an issue for mankind, right? Like, do you want to be a person that's rooted in cool, or do you want to be a person that's rooted in substance, right? And I think when you start thinking about hype, like I think I correlate hype and cool. There isn't anything wrong with being cool as long as you're not sacrificing your integrity in the process. Does that make sense? So when you look at what's happening over the last 3 years, I think being alone, it makes us either a better version of ourselves, or in some people, they start to chase that demon, that cool demon, to a point where they start to lose the focus of who they should be, because we don't know who they are, but who they should be, and maybe they're not rooting their life in integrity or character or just being a solid person. You start to get rooted in just chasing whatever it is that helps you become cool. And sometimes that leads you down a rabbit hole. So I think over the last 3 years, it's been a mixed bag. I've come out of it and I'm seeing kids now wanting to explore the world differently. And I think the thing I do think that happened is because of everything that happened with George Floyd in the middle of COVID, that caused a bit of it brought us all closer globally. But I think something that we definitely lost is the fact that it's past some, and now that we're all back outside, to your point, I'm not going to say our priorities have shifted, but I do understand that there's been like people playing catch up. And I think you're to play catch up to cool than it is to like sit down and like really drilling on what it is you want for the rest of the world around you. If that makes sense.
How do you balance that hype and substance through your retail doors? I mean, you've got Social Status, Maniére, APB, and Prosper. Obviously, community is important to all four of those doors, but how do you balance the need for hype, because I think there definitely is a need for hype, but also the need for substance to kind of be at the forefront.
And listen, hype is also cultural relevance, right? Like if you're not culturally connected to what's happening, then because there's not anything wrong with hype, right? Hype just means that you're so dug in to what you do that uh other people think it's interesting, right? So that's just a connection, a meaningful connection to the ecosystem that you're a part of. Um Building community, shit, for us, it's the only thing we focus on. Like the hype part, I'm the good part about my plight, just being black in America and growing up where I grown up, I'm always laser focused. I'm from where I'm from. That'll never shift. My taste sensibilities are my taste sensibilities. You were kind of born into it that way, right? Like, so there's a connection that you can't, it's like almost impossible to disconnect. That makes sense. Like you naturally connect to music naturally. And you still got to keep an ear because obviously at 40, you got other rappers and other kids that are influencing the world differently than I did 20 or we did 20 years ago, right? So you got to stay connected that way. But as long as you're intentional about it, it just happens. Does that make sense? The thing that takes real work is getting people to want to build into others, right? Because when you're young, you're on this mission to just like be better yourself. And the thing you trying to teach other people is like, yo, you got to work on being better together, right? Like this idea that this is in this global marketplace, we can't view each other as competition because when you do, it becomes dog eats dog, right? And there isn't even think about let's go to product for a second. Think about the days of like all the other footwear brands that competed with Nike and Adidas in the 80s, right? Schneig's, Avia, some of them caught a vibe on a shoe or two, right? But at some point, like you started to see things kind of just one follow the other. The people who are uniquely different, right? And are comfortable existing in a space with others, even if it is a competitive landscape, it makes things, it gives you a lot better purpose in your existence. I guess I said all that to say, if you get comfortable bringing other folks along, you survive better. If that makes sense. And you built better. I shouldn't say survive better. You're built better. You're built stronger. At least that's my belief, right? Like I'm a person that had to grow up, you know, my brothers, my family, and the people where I'm from. And because of those people around me, I'm stronger for it. Like, right?
You speak a lot about how community is what you guys do, and the hype obviously follows depending on the release and depending on what's coming and who you've partnered with. But whose responsibility is it, in your opinion, to foster community? I know you believe it's your responsibility and everyone's responsibility, but would it be more the retailer's responsibility who have brick and mortar stores in these local neighborhoods? Is it brands that are selling their sneakers to these people, or is it actually the consumer that needs to step up and make a community out of it?
All three, but that's the stew, right? Like when you just hit it, it's the brand, the intermediary, and then the end consumer, right? And what you cook ultimately starts to dictate what the stew tastes like. Does that make sense? Having product that isn't good is not connect. So you need good product, right? So the brand has to have a responsibility to build good product, right? And as a partner, how we got to provide insights and ideas and partner with the brand for good product, right? And the stories and the stories and the cultural connection is what brings it to life. But the unique why at the end is what connects it all together, right? Like you got to have a reason for getting out to bed at the morning, getting out of the bed in the morning, right? The why is the red thread that connects everything. Like if you don't have a why, an overarching why, for why you move, then you can be successful in life, or you can get somewhere in life. But I think the people who've done who have meaningfully changed the world have had a super sharp why, and they wrote it, right? Like, did Elon Musk think he was going to be the richest person in the world? But not in the beginning. When he wrote the stock option deal 4 or 5 years ago, he seen it then, but he'd been on his journey long before then, right? Your why has to, when Phil Knight's why was so strong, right? And then the rest of it catches up. So it's a shared responsibility. And that shared responsibility has to be connected with a shared vision and a shared value system. But the overarching why is the thing that connects everybody. And if you continue to go back to why you're doing something, it'll be the guide, it'll be the red thread to get you to the end every time.
So what's your big why?
Oh shit, humanity, purpose. Like making things around me better. Like I think I want people to touch us and touch me and walk away from me better. Does that make sense? Like, yo, it's just there's this opportunity for us to now engage and do all of these things. When you look at what we do across the business, we touch all these things that are quote unquote cool. And we have access to so many things that kids view as social currency. So when you sit in this point of privilege, I could just like talk about whatever people think is cool, right? I could feed the hype machine, but no, I'd rather beat to a different drum and be a bit comfortable in my own skin, but try to grasp the people who want to do more meaningful things and push and drive them, right? I got to be a catalyst for veggies. I got to be the veggie. I got to be a vegetarian, right? There's enough people who are carnivores and they looking to eat meat all day. That's the whole look on Instagram, click search, carnivore nation, right? But rarely do you see people who have an opportunity to do both choose the latter, right? So for me, I like the path of least resistance. I just function better that way. I do better as the underdog, right? So I think for me, my life is more meaningful and has more purpose and more value if I'm able to touch people and touch communities and simply add value and make them better.
Adding value and setting up stories and setting up ideas and all of that takes time. But is it something for you which is more easy in a way? Like, is this everything which is living inside you so you can structure it in a, I would say, better or faster way? Or do you specifically need time to rest, to sit down, to think of stories, to build up storytellings or whatever to finalize what you're thinking of? You know what I mean? Like, is James Whitner sitting for hours on a chair, kind of meditating about like how do these Jordan 3, these Jordan 2, or these Jordan 1 has to look like? What's the bigger picture? Or is this something which goes bam, bam, bam? Because you know we are living in fast times.
Yeah, well, design is just design. Like, I don't think any about that. I do, because you gotta like, yo, let's be clear here. When you specifically talking about Jordans, you're talking about 14 of the best shoes that was ever invented in mankind. So let's start there, right? The thing that's more important is the story. And I'm never thinking about that. It's lived experience. If anything, I'm decompressing to try to keep my mind where it needs to go, because we live on Earth, bro, and it's not in a good place right now. Like we got dictators in some places that want to kill freedom. You got leaders that believe that divisiveness is the way to the future, and we haven't seen that since we've seen the worst parts of our history on Earth, right? So we're getting to a new place on Earth, where we're getting to a place on Earth where hate is being fueled and leveraged to bring us all apart. So again, my pain is my privilege. I walk around every day as a Black man, so I get to experience life the way I've seen it as a kid. In my mind, I'm still in the projects. In my mind, I'm still living that experience. In my mind, my separation, I'm not very far removed from where I'm from. We still, people still dying, right? Like my friends are still dying. Um, it's a real thing that I deal with every day. So my emotions, I don't allow for my emotions to ever catch up to my current existence. And I think we all, if you go see a psychiatrist, I think you'll find a bit of us are all living in our childhood some, and we'll always be fighting those demons and that we did coming up. So I do have to meditate to keep my levels from not fucking exploding. Because my issue is I care too much. I care at the behest of our own organization at some points, right? Like I over index on caring. And if anything, that might probably be my downfall.
Yeah, would you say then, just taking that last thought, that the different retail locations and the different doors that you have, I mean, they're obviously categorized in a different way. A Maniére is the more high-end luxury. Then you've got social status, which is more of like a streetwear boutique, younger maybe a little bit. And would you say that they almost serve, because this is how I'm reading what you've just said, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but do they serve as a bit of an outlet for you for these stories, and that you can then categorize these stories? So this story is more of an Ama Maniére story. Let's do something here. This is more of a social status story. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, it's places for kids to come. It's places for people to engage and interact. They're places for me to go. Like they're safe havens for me to go live in culture in a safe way, right? Like go live in culture the way I know how to live in culture is dangerous. Like where I come from, I'm sitting around my projects. You got to be able to protect yourself. And at this point, I don't think our team want me walking around the way I did when I was 14. So I can't move in some of the same places that I would have been able to move as a kid because my life has just shifted. But to your point, Fab, it's our retail doors, APB, Prosper, Social Status, Maniére, give me different connection points in different cities and different ways to communicate our feelings to the marketplace, and ways to hear them and receive them and understand who's coming at us and why.
But is this more like that you're sitting there and you have to structure it? So 2 hours a day is for Ama Maniére, 2 hours a day is for social status, and so on and so on? Or is it more like this multi-talented musician who says, oh, today I want to play the drums, and maybe tomorrow I would like to do the bass, but maybe I would do the guitar. So let's see what's happening.
Well, it's more just creating lines of thinking, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
This is, I've always divided things in ways that work for my brain. Like I figured my brain out really. I think that's been one of my life superpowers. I was able to crack the James code really, really early. Like figure out what drives me. When am I best self? When am I my best self? What do I need to do to make myself to get as much out of myself as I possibly can? And creating lines of thinking against all the brands has helped me, because now I have this team around us, right? Our team is incredible, and we all have these lines of thinking. And if we stay within the boundaries of thinking for each banner, it becomes very clear of what we should do, when, and why. And we do the same thing around the work that we do in the people we serve and the places we serve. Like we start to think about what's important in these places, what's important to the people in these places, and how do we want to communicate with them, and what's the messages, what do we want to anchor the messages in? When you got 4 things that define the way you're approaching it, it just makes it easier. Does that make sense? At least for us.
So let me stuck with this sentence you said, breaking the James code. How do you exactly did this? Is this just the experience of life, living years and years, or was it at the point where you said, man, maybe I have to do this and this, and maybe I have to train or build a routine or whatsoever? So there are so many ways you probably could do that. How was it at yours, specifically for the James code? as you said.
Nah, bro, it comes for me. I remember walking to school in third grade and it just started hitting me.
Really crazy.
Yeah, like, I mean, but you start to realize and recognize your circumstances, right? Like, I started to recognize my circumstances at a very young age. And I was aware. I mean, when you walking out of the projects, and we had to walk from, we lived in buildings, and there were six, it was between 18 and 24 units and 32 units in some buildings. So we lived in these big buildings stacked. You walk out of your projects and then you start, the neighborhoods got nicer as you walk to school. Probably about 25-minute walk. When you walk it every day, if you like thinking something, like, yo, it just starts to open your aperture to like, yo, something ain't right. Like, they don't look like they living like us. The kids that's walking in them houses don't look like they experiencing what we experiencing. So it was first catching up with my feelings and my why. Like, why is this happening, or what makes us unique, and why is our circumstances like this? And you don't know how, right, at the time, but that's when the conversation starts with yourself. What started with myself. And I got very comfortable in the idea that I needed to solve me to solve it. And the accountability part start clicking in as I got older, right? Because you start realizing the circumstances to some of your harebrained ideas. Because some of those ideas, wasn't exactly legal. Does that make sense? But they were approaches to try to rectify my current circumstances, right? So it's a balance of things that you need to do. And that's why I'm never one to judge how people try to crack their personal code, because you don't necessarily know someone's circumstances that drives them to do what it is that they do, that some people may demonize or may look at them. However, I tend to have to try to have empathy for everybody, including like the worst people that's ever entered society. I try to at least empathize with what got them to a place that could drive them to be so bad, because I always say the people that are worse usually went through some horrible experiences, but you don't get no credit for that. You know what I'm saying?
What's it like for you? Because the last time we spoke, we were talking about the social status dunks, right? And the storytelling around that, what it means, what you and the team were doing as part of the release. But how is it for you? Are you able to kind of take a breath after these projects are done and look back and appreciate the change it's made in those communities, or are you straight on to the next project?
I ain't got, honestly, the breath is how it's received and the impact it has. I quickly measure the circumstances. Things don't change for long, right? You get incremental change, and you got to grab that incremental change. Well, I'll say it differently. You are 15 minutes of fame. In life, I give this advice all the time. We all get 15 minutes. Once you grab it, you got to make it a lifetime, right? And if you're really good, you make it a legacy. And if you're great, you're able to continue that legacy into the lineage of your family's lifetime, right? Opportunities work the same way, right? Because for me, I don't pause much or try to pause much, because we're down by 300 or 400 years as Black people, right? Fuck, I got the pause for. Does that make sense? It's so messed up on humanity just in this microcosm for 40 million people in America and then other continents around the country. And you start thinking like in Europe, what's happening with immigration and how Africans are viewed coming into European countries. Like, yo, they're looked at like fucking less than human, if that makes sense. It's for humanity, we got so far to go. I can breathe when I die. But you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. So then how were these projects, specifically the projects from the last 2 years, how were they received by the communities around your retail doors?
I think we're having impact, cultural impact. The impact that we need is social.
Okay.
And that's the sugar and veggies, right? You have to be so important to people that they never want to let you go. Once you're so important to them, they'll make you a part of their lives. Then you can start to change their core value system.
Honestly, before you dropped the Jordan 3 Amant Maniére, which is the storytelling about female empowerment, the mother, and this whole thing of storytelling. Honestly, before that release, there haven't been not many shoes people looking for the storytelling behind it. Of course, you have, let's say, the Jordan 1 Michael Jordan is wearing, and you have the Jordan 3 Michael Jordan is wearing. You know, that's a storytelling in itself, of course. But you building another storytelling out of that, and you do it with a video, you do it with some interviews, and so on. And in my perspective, it was crazy in a good way, like crazy good to see that people not just like the shoe itself because design is good or the Jordan 3 is a great silhouette and so on, but besides that, thinking of the story itself and say, okay, it makes sense that we have this kind of special for female empowerment release, the storytelling, the words which are written on or into the shoe, and so on and so on. Is this something? And now I put out a specific word for it. Are you proud about that, or is this something which you say, finally, someone get what I wanted to tell?
No, I'm very proud about what we accomplish. I'm just not satisfied.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. I know what you mean.
All the pride, and I understand. Like, yo, we get a chance to do something like incredible things. You even start to hear people like, well, are those guys doing too much? Or are they, you start to hear some of that noise. And I kind of look and say, I mean, what I just said, like, do you understand what we fighting against? You're looking at this as culture. I'm trying to find solutions for humanity. Does that make sense? Once again, that's why I said earlier, my passion could be my blind spot. Does that make sense? Like, yo, from a business perspective, I understand how to balance our books and grow us and do what we need to do. But like, yo, not at the behest of our integrity or the things that we really believe in, if that makes sense.
On the other hand, you could have say back then when you released the 3 and then the 1 and then the 2, you could just say like, let's do some good designs, and it's good to see that. And I already posted that on Instagram, and you agreed with me, which makes me kind of thinking that I put on the right thought about that it follows a line, the 3, the 2, the 1, and the 4. Even if we just saw some leaks, but some good leaks. So it follows a line in design. And you could put it like that, I'm a good designer and these are some nice shoes. But that's not the end of the road for you. You want to tell people things. And I do really adore that thought behind that, because for me, storytelling is everything. First of all, the storytelling, of course, you need a good product. Definitely. But besides a good product, it needs some storytelling to get these emotions. And you don't want to wear stuff you can't have a connection with. So you have to understand, why are these things, why is it like that? And that's, besides what you guys are doing, that's why I really admire what Joe Freshgoods does. Because there's always the story behind that.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I mean, listen, from a product side, I'm not undermining that you need good. All of this has to be anchored in good product.
Of course.
If you don't have good product, we're dead on arrival. No one cares. You're just you're grass.
Yeah, you're alone in a room telling no one something. No one is listening because no one is there.
Just talking to walls, right?
Yeah.
So there is a burden of making sure that we hit. But when I'm fighting in the rooms with our partners, when I think Fab asked a question earlier, you start asking what's the responsibilities of big brands, like, yo, give us space, right? Like without our brand partners, specifically Nike and Jordan have been the most vocal, and their leadership has been like unwavering in their level of support and with an understanding that like, yo, we ain't fighting like this is not a 1 round fight. Like, this is a 400-year fight, and we ain't gonna solve it by doing one BHM drop and you being the black guy. Like, yo, we got to be on a journey. Like Supreme is Supreme, and I've said this 100 million times. They've been talking about Supreme for 25 years. They've had the support system of the globe's best brands for 25 years. Same with Comme des Garçons. Same with, I could keep saying brand after brand, right? And if we're going to solve something in a meaningful way, man, you got to have the investment of your partners, and they got to be in line with fixing it. And they may not always have the answer, but sometimes the best answer is us all being able to get in the room and talk about what the potential answers could be, and being committed to stand in the room until you figure it out. That's commitment, right?
Yeah, I like that thought as well, how you can talk about responsibility, but it's also about everyone pitching in. You can't do it alone. The retailer can't do it alone. The consumer can't do it alone. The brand can probably do a little bit more than both of those alone, but can't do all of it alone either, right? And so you need good product, but you need good product and space, and for the brand to properly invest in your stories, into your storytelling, and say, listen, we're not just going to do, like you said, one Black History Month shoe, but we're going to do a series of however many. I mean, it's going to be 5 Jordans, right? And probably more to come, maybe 14 when it's all said and done, right? But like, I think that's a nice thought, that everyone has to kind of come together, and that's another aspect of community that's so important.
Well, I'll say it different. 14 is finite. The issue that we got lasts past my lifetime.
Yeah.
Think about it. Someone said to me, and I looked at them like they had 2 heads. Are you comfortable with the idea of the work you're doing maybe past your lifetime? What the fuck you mean past my lifetime? Like, I'm fixing this while I'm living. That makes sense. It's unrealistic for me to think that way. What we're building has to be built to surpass my years on this earth. If not, then like, yo, think about, did anybody think we was getting Donald Trump as an American president? Come on. They talk about this dude DeSantis in Florida. He's empowered by a dude named Trump, who just, Fox News exists as a media company, a real media company that we allow to survive. We destroyed Roe versus Wade in forever ago. And right now, today, men are dictating what we want to happen to women's bodies, regardless on what side you are. We shouldn't get a say on what women like, yo, so y'all get a chance to enslave me if you feel like it. Is that an idea that we're going to have in 200 years? Right? That's when like I start saying like, yo, the problems, the why dictates the what. Does that make sense? So the why is so big that the what can't be 14 shoes. Does that make sense?
That's true. That makes sense.
A really big why.
But will there be 14 shoes?
I
have to ask.
We want to know from a product question, because people do care. We don't want to give them all veggies. From a product point of view, it's endless. The brands, Nike and Jordan, are open to discussing anything at this point. It wasn't always that way. They are truly, y'all don't see it like you see Ben and Jerry's, right? Mm-hmm. But like, yo, John Donahoe's a different dude. Like, y'all look at the quirky tech dude, right? That dude is wired in a way that the world won't see, right? We need CEOs that's willing to be as bold as he is. And I rarely say his name publicly, right? But yo, dude is on some other shit when it comes to like really pushing the issues and supporting people in a meaningful way to stand up. Why? If that makes sense. I don't exist without that level of support. Phil McCartney, Hit a Footwear, Chris Wright, Craig Williams. Like, there's bold leaders who take a lot of bullets for standing on humanity, right? Because you got a company that stands on cool and sport, right? But when these leaders are beating the table on, we gonna stand on a bigger why, because that's the most important human connection, right? So when you start talking about product 1 through 14, when you got leaders that are bold visionaries on humanity from a product perspective, man, we might build the spaceship to sell Air Force Ones out of. Who knows what we'll do next? Nothing. The cards are like, it's about creating future leaders, empowering people to grow, reshaping the world in a meaningful way, and leveraging the power of the product to make it all happen.
But please let me stick with the product side of things just for a second again, because is there or was there a plan behind, first of all, releasing the 3, then the 1, then the 2? And if there is any specific style you could pick out of the whole range, not just the Jordan range, maybe every shoe the swoosh has ever done, is there something like, I would say, and I hate the word, but is there a grail for you?
The 4.
And then it's coming out.
The 4 is an incredible shoe. The 3 is an incredible shoe. Those are shoes that mean the world to me, and I could just wear them. Air Force One, incredible shooter. Yo, these are shoes that we gonna be in the dirt. They'll be talking about these shoes in the year 3200, right? We're almost certain of that at this point. Like, yo, so again, like all from a like product grail perspective, those are the ones. And I'm never a person that's like, I'm not a dude to say like, oh, this is my, yo, I dream too big, respectfully, for sneaker culture. I dream too big for that to be like something that's just like, yeah, I love a 4. To work on a 4 would be incredible. But again, my why is too big for that to be my biggest dream. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And the product part is a vehicle that gives me the ability to talk about veggies too much when people want me to talk about sugar.
Totally fair. But I have to ask, because you already did the Air Force One in the low cut and in the mid cut range. You did the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4. Now there are leaks around a 12. Then you're doing the Airship with social status, the Dunk Mid with social status. So there's a lot of going on. Is there nothing like, oh man, I would like to have like this Nike Air Max 1, the Nike Air Max 97, or something completely obscure from the 70s or something like that?
No, let me help you.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm really happy if you would say, no, there's nothing else, because I already fulfilled this kind of product dreams. Then I would be really happy for you, so don't get me wrong.
No, we haven't fulfilled our product dreams, because if, again, the world, this my mind, we just create our own product. We create our own product that's designated for us, if that makes sense. I think, again, the idea of lines and collaborations only work because they're done sparingly, right? But what happens if you just change your thinking, and everything that we sold, we built? Everything we sold with Nike, we built. Everything that we sold with Jordan, we built. And we built it in a meaningful way. And we took our thinking about solving humanity globally, and you start to find unique places and unique thinking, the same way you find a unique room that you want to stay in as a hotel, or a unique place to eat, right? I think that the thinking's way too narrow for where, like, you're thinking in items and I'm thinking in lineage and legacy. Does that make sense? Like this is way bigger than one launch or 117 or one. I'm thinking about the shoe that isn't made yet, and the future shoes to be made, and the leaders who are to make that product, and how we streamline the idea of making it, and weave our red thread into the product, and how we bring it to the world in a way that makes the world rethink its relationship with consumption, and not in a negative way, but the consumer can start to choose how they spend their dollars. Does that make sense? Where there's smart buying, like you buy a Tesla or a EV because you're being friendly to the earth, right? Like if you are happen to be working with us as a brand partner, then you know what it is you supporting. Does that make sense? That's the ecosystem that I'm looking to create.
And creating this legacy you're talking about is something which is a crazy great idea, to be honest. I'm remembering I stood in line a few weeks before this podcast interview. I stood in line at the Pata release in Amsterdam. And of course, there have been people who are just waiting in line for the shoe. They like the shoe, the design, they want to have the next hype thing, maybe they want to get some money on the secondary market, whatever. So, product driven. But you saw that some people have been there not just for the product itself, but more for the community thinking. So Pata set up something that the community could come together, and they talking to each other. And I'm stood there beside the release store, because this was some special occasion, and I stood there and I watched the people like standing in line and then starting talking to each other about whatever. Maybe, you have great shoes on your feet. Let's start with the product, chit chat here, chit chat there, and then it gets more and more and more, and then the community evolves. And that's something really stood out. What you're telling, that it's not just about the product, of course, but we have to ask about that. That's for sure. But besides that, the storytelling is important, and then that you have the wish to create a legacy which stand the test of time, because it's something which is bigger. You decided for yourself that you want to have this. How can I say that? You're not a painter. You know what I mean? But you're equal to a painter, because you just choose the product to be your canvas, and that's where you want to tell your stories. And you want to have the retail spaces, which are your canvas, that people come in, feel like they having this community kind of thing. So this is bigger than that. And this is something I really like.
No, I appreciate you. And G and the boys from Pata are, incredible thinkers, and them dudes help stand up what this world is about, right? And you hit it. It's listen, man. Sometimes I come off as like a buzzkill, because it's like, I'm always so focused on what I'm focused on. But it's that you gotta be able to have some fun in it. And that is the product part, right? Like the product part, it is being able to work on, the idea of people thinking, if we're going to do 1 through 14, like when somebody posts a picture of how, I don't know how the hell they got a picture of what is supposed to be a Maniére 4. It might be the 4, could be the exact picture of the 4, or something that looks very similar to what may be the when you see that picture of like a 1 through 4 and it's our product, hell yeah, that feels good, right? But then it happens. You know what it is? I immediately go from feeling really good to feeling really bad.
Okay.
Does that make sense? The bad is like, you can't win at this like this alone. Like the opportunity is so much bigger than just our team being able to do something this. And to be honest, it's not why it happened. Like, until there was a belief that what we cared about could help reshape the global conversation, that's when the opportunity showed up, right? So now it keeps me focused on that. I worked 15 years and nobody knew I was here, right? Let me back up. I worked 7 years, 8 years, just with our brick and mortar teams in the back office of nobody. Then Kev and come on, and we built the back office together. And now we got 300 some people we manage. 15 years before people, Maniére will be 10 and 20 in 2024. APB will be 10. Social status will be 15. right? Flavor Factory would have been 20. That makes sense in 2024. So you start to think about, we've been doing this for this long and doing cool. Like, yo, I've been cool since I came out of my mom's womb. Like, I'm the coolest motherfucker I know. Does that make sense? Like, I have an unlimited amount of personal confidence, and I have a vision of myself that's so high, and my expectations of who I am, who I'm supposed to be, and the work I'm supposed to do is so high that I honestly don't give a fuck about being cool, because to me, I'm the center of my cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Unwavering. You can't, I don't care how cool everybody think the next guy is. In my mind, I'm good. I'm not threatened by that. Does that make sense? I'm anchored in who I am. I'm anchored in where I'm from. It doesn't waver.
That's a great statement.
Real quick on that. So you talked about previously as well, Nike really buying into your mission of storytelling and enacting change through product and purpose, right? And substance, which is the more important thing. Is this also you and your team, of course, laying the blueprint for others? Because you said you alone with this kind of access can't achieve the why, but you showing other retailers, other creatives that you can reach this level at some point, and then Nike or other brands allowing more of these people to have the status that you and your team share with Nike. That is the plan, or a part of the plan.
Fab, you've always been great at this interview thing because you catch it.
Thank you.
That is the absolute. If I exist once, everybody should now be able to do what?
What do you mean? If you exist once?
I existed one time.
Yeah.
I'm going to live one life, me, James, with my story. It's the story of X amount of millions of kids haven't been able to make this of themselves, right? Teams. Our team exists as a unified team. Mark was on this call 10 minutes before me to cover my ass, and he probably had to cancel 2 calls to do so, right? The connection that we have as a team and what we are as people, 100% is we're built in a blueprint to give to the world and to create opportunities for other kids to exist, right? Like, that's why I said I'm not doing no competing. I'm trying to find and help put on the next version of me. I'm not getting in nobody's way. If anything, I'm knocking the door off the hinges. And our team got axes and sledgehammers trying to knock the walls down for you. Does that make sense? Our goal is to try to knock as many holes in the room to get as many people access to it as possible. Because again, if we doing this legacy work, we can't do it alone. It's 200 of us. How many billions of people on this planet? We need scale.
Yeah.
And you need scale when people that's rooted in the right thinking, the people who's grounded in their substance, people who's not willing to chase likes at a point that they're not willing to build themselves up as a person, right? We need consumerism to balance itself and authenticity to enter the room at a higher level. So then we're making better choices as humans and life gets a little better, right? There might be some capitalist somewhere to say that's I'm gonna cause a recession with that thinking. But if we slow down growth a couple clicks to increase integrity and in character and family values and morals in the right direction in 25 clicks, it was worth the 2 clicks down.
Bringing it back to product real quick, we've already spoken a lot about the Maniére Jordans, the social status dunks, obviously the pennies that just released, the airships. How do you match the storytelling to the silhouette? For the 3, obviously that was the shoe your mom bought you and your brothers, right? It was your first Jordan. And so there it makes sense that the Raised by Women storyline is matched to that silhouette. But what about the others?
We don't. We think of a story and then we ghost stories and we pull product into stories. And some of it is just that's some of it's brand strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's important to our partners and what's important to the kid. It's that stew that we talked about making, right? Like you need the insight, like what do kids want but aren't seeing? What does the brand need but they're not there yet? And how can we incubate and connect them and bring it all together? Does that make sense? It won't always, it damn sure can't be about me, right? Like I try to make it as little about me as I possibly can. And my goal is to just try to bring people together and move things forward and tear down walls. If I can get enough walls torn down and get the right people in the room, the magic will start to happen, right? So my goal is keeping magic happening, right? Like getting the chaos and the toxicity out the room and getting the right things in the room so we continue to make magic.
James, many thanks for taking your time, telling us about your vision, about everything you and your team is pulling off, about everything which is coming out, which will be like the whole Jordan legacy together with Maniére. So we are looking forward to that. But many thanks that you take the time, and we stay connected, definitely.
No, let's definitely. And I appreciate you guys taking the time and appreciate the support from everyone in Germany, and you guys tapping us, man. We can't do it without you. So it's definitely appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was no one better to kind of help us tell the story of community and really reveal the importance of it. So also for me, thank you, James. Really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys. If you need anything, let me know.
Und damit vielen Dank, dass ihr bei der 115. Episode mit dabei wart. Ihr könnt alle Episoden wie gewohnt kostenlos auf Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Deezer, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, Podtail, Podigy und auch bei allen anderen Streamingdiensten hören. Und wir würden uns sehr freuen, wenn ihr dem Oshun Podcast und unserem News-Podcast O-News dort folgt, wo ihr Podcasts am liebsten hört. Hört auf jeden Fall auch die aktuelle Folge O-News und beantwortet die Frage der Woche, powered by StockX. Alle Einsendungen haben am Ende des Monats die Chance auf einen Sneaker-Gutschein im Wert von fetten 250 €. Wenn ihr diese Folge auch schon übrigens in eurer Instagram-Story teilt und uns verlinkt, damit wir das auch sehen, seid ihr ebenfalls mit dabei. Schaut auch auf Facebook, TikTok und Instagram.com/oshun-Podcast vorbei und interagiert mit uns und der Community. Thema Community, wichtig. Checkt auf jeden Fall auch die Sneaker-Suchmaschine Sneakerjägers und werdet Teil der Sneakerjägers-Community. Supporten könnt ihr uns unter anderem mit einer positiven 5-Sterne-Bewertung bei Spotify und Apple Podcast. Über 600 positive Bewertungen hat Oshun auf den Plattformen schon und eine Apple Podcast Review würden wir hier gerne mit euch teilen. Kai Bülke schrieb, eigentlich hätte ich nur 1 Stern geben sollen, weil es meines Erachtens nach unverantwortlich ist, den Oshun Podcast nur alle 2 Wochen zu bringen. Das bedarf enormer Abzüge. Allerdings bin ich andererseits jeden zweiten Sonntag sehr gut gelaunt und unterhalten, dass ich die 4 Sterne wieder dazu rechnen musste. Sehr, 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 sehr gut. Weiter so. Vielen Dank. Tut uns einen Gefallen und supportet die Podcasts und erzählt mindestens einem Freund oder einer Freundin, die sich für Sneaker und Streetwear interessiert, von uns. Show some love. Dankeschön. Wir hören uns in der nächsten Episode wieder. Bis dahin, macht's gut.
Peace, danke fürs Zuhören. Ciao.